There we go. Can you hear us now, YouTube? They're saying no audio. Yep, they can hear us now. Cool, thank you. What's good, YouTube? I'm your host, Dewan Lightfoot. Today, we have Big Evil Beard, Stuart Clark. He's been an inspiration to me since the first day I met him. He is undoubtedly one of the hardest working people I know. He's one of the most genuine people I know. He pours himself into his work and into others. If you have been working on a Devnet certification or have posted anything Devnet related, I'm pretty sure Stuart has liked your post, retweeted your post, commented on your post, because he's that type of leader. And when I mean leader, he's a Devnet advocate, he's a Devnet technical leader, and he's a leader in general in life. I would like to introduce you all, if you do not know him, to Big Evil Beard himself, Stuart Clark, my man.
Oh man, thank you for that huge introduction, buddy. I was starting to wonder who you were speaking about. I thought that can't be me he's introducing right on there.
Man, I'm speaking directly to you, about you, because as you all know, I am, let me see, where's it at?
You go.
Yeah, I'm a part of the Devnet team at Cisco. And since the day that I even was going to apply, Stuart reached out to me. The day I got hired, Stuart reached out to me. And every day since, Stuart has been a lifeline to me. Thank you, brother.
No, thank you. It's a huge pleasure. It really, really is.
Yes,
really
sir.
a huge pleasure for me.
So, you've been automating before Devnet, right?
Yeah. So automation was one of those things that I didn't embrace right away. I kind of, thinking back about it, I kind of missed the train, when I think a lot of people started jumping on it quite early. I was head buried down into other things, doing building stuff and other certification things, and I didn't put a lot of stock into the automation when it first came along. I've been around people doing automation for a very, very long time in different ways, through even just writing, simple scripts to gather information from devices and make changes and things, mostly, through Linux and expect and things. And then automation started really building. And there came a part of me where I started looking into it, and I said, like, okay, I've got to get onto this. So it was just kind of like it came to a point. I finished what I was doing. I wanted to complete what I was doing. And you see this question kind of a lot in the community. People are saying, they're studying for a certification on the one track. Should they put that to one side and concentrate on this? But so I completed what I wanted to do, and then I turned my attention into full-time automation. That was where I saw the next step for my career to go to. So yeah, that was the way it went.
Yeah, you turned your focus into automation, but you were actually automating full data centers. Did you take baby steps into network automation, or did you just go head on into automating data centers?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't just go in at the deep end. I mean, I went in at the big depths straight away. Straight away. I was very fortunate, to be surrounded by a lot of people who've done a lot of great automation, and to be able to learn from them and learn from their experiences, and their mistakes and what they'd learned in doing the automation at the time. So that was a great experience for me. But yeah, it was just kind of like just going straight head on onto it, straight into it.
I think that's really important. I know Ron Arts, if you're watching or if you happen to watch this, he was the person that actually was my, I would say, safety net for automation. He was the person that introduced me into it and helped guide me in that direction. Those people on the journey are really important, because automation is a big deal. But once you get comfortable, you learn to test and you learn those safeguards yourself. It's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad, and you kind of, even when you're working with the most experienced of people, you don't just start automating a full stack, a full data center, just in, doing that entire piece in one go. You don't try and boil the ocean in one go. You start off on the kind of the small things, the daily challenges that you want to solve, the things that are the most kind of time consuming for you within your day job. To allow you to focus on doing those things. Once you've automated away that kind of low hanging fruit, it does enable you to spend more time working on the bigger projects, the things that are going to help you both as learning from a growth perspective, but also it's going to help your team, it's going to help your company. You start bringing in business use cases, and you start talking about things like capex and opex, and speaking with higher level people within the company to say, this is why we're doing this is why I need to invest more time, even if you're not investing money at that stage. If you're using things like Python, like Napalm, Scrappy, NetMiko, Nornaya, PyATS, Python libraries, Ansible, all of those things, it takes time, and in a company, time is money. So you're not procuring hardware or anything like that, going through that to be able to do this. But again, time is money. So you're convincing your organization that this is a worthwhile thing, a worthwhile project for you to sink your teeth into. And these are the outcomes on it. These are the business benefits and outcomes for that, which is a challenge within itself.
So did you get started with Ansible, Python? How did you start your automation journey?
Yeah, first of all, it was Ansible. Ansible was, kind of friendly just to start doing, and that was just simple, just pulling information from devices. It was I can't count how many times I was asked to audit the network, or in previous jobs when I've been asked to audit other customers' networks, and these weren't small. We're talking 300, 500 devices, and I have been there doing the chauffeur, copy it, paste it into an Excel sheet. And then it's got a date down the kind of the left-hand column from when you did the last audit, and you've got the the change and things. But when that task is, you're being asked every week, and you can't rely on, say, a static documentation like a wiki page or an updated sheet to be 100% reliable or to truth, or there's an upgrade taking place, and you're leading a team, or you're working with your team, and they're doing upgrades, and you want to know how far ahead they are in that project, or where they are within that thing, because say an issue is being reported, they've started an upgrade and they're going from east to west or west to east, and then certain traffic anomalies are starting to happen, and you're starting to see something, you're starting to build a use case here, or build a case of there's a problem beginning to happen, and you want to see whereabouts they are in that thing to see if you can geographically see where your customers are starting to experience an issue. And if it is down to the upgrade that's taking place, that manual version, again, isn't going to yield the results as quickly as you're going to need them. Right. So yeah, Ansible was a great way just to get started, to pull information from there. And then Ansible came from looking at versions on devices, to auditing access lists, to auditing BGP peerings, not only with transit, but bilateral and multilateral peerings at IXPs, globally across, to see where you were peering and where you were seeing traffic. So yeah, start getting information first. Ansible was the first point of call for me.
So now that you've kind of delved into Ansible, Python, and different tools that are out there, someone that's looking to get started, which tool would you recommend would be the, I would say, easiest way to get started?
The easiest way to get started, I think, is with Ansible. And I think there's a really, really great quote that I read a while ago. And I really want to say that it was David Barbosa who said this quote. And he's talked about comparing how you don't need to know how an engine works to drive a car. Right. And that's kind of how, Ansible really is. And that's the really, really cool thing that you can do straight out the box to start pulling out automation from it. And from that, it was the kind of, because I'd started with Ansible, it kind of came up, my automation journey kind of started at the same time that our team, the team that I was working on, merged with another team who were then pure Python. They still use Ansible for various tasks. So that's when I kind of, turned away and went into the Python kind of thing. But yeah, starting out for automation, I think Ansible is the most friendliest kind of just to build that bit of confidence with.
Thank you for that. If you all are just tuning in, please hit this video with a like. And we're speaking with Stuart Clark. He's a technical leader and Devnet advocate for Cisco Devnet. He's been doing automation for a good while now. He's automated data centers. He's I would say, encourager of many in the community, and he shares a ton of information. If you have not read his blog posts on Cisco Blogs, he's written over 40 blogs. He's consistently trying to put out great information in the community. I posted his contact information in the description of this video. So, yeah, make sure you go follow him on Twitter, connect with him on LinkedIn, because he will do everything he can to help you. He's done it for me and many others. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Taz, Tiffany, Gifted Lane. I appreciate you all moderating in the chat. If you all have questions, please feel free to drop them, and I'll get to them here throughout the day. So you got your start with Ansible, and you say that's a great way to start. I totally agree with that. Now, when it comes to Python, at what point should you start delving into Python, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think everybody's use case might differ from when they start doing it. Even when you're starting with Ansible, if your goal is to go into the automation route, there's nothing to stop you from learning Python and Ansible at the same time. I think Ansible will give you that lowest bar of entry to go in and start, getting information back from devices, but there's nothing to stop you learning Python. The mistake that I kind of made in the early day is because my team integrated with another team, and they were huge experts within Python. And I started doing a lot of workflows in Python. I didn't necessarily really know what I was doing. I was automating because I was using Ginger and YAML and templates and APIs to get information back. But this was more doing sort of add, move, changes. And then there was a whole process already in place for me to start working into. And I found myself, I got, a couple of months into this, maybe 3-6 months into this, and I was doing some bits and pieces, but I didn't feel that I'd learned Python. What I'd felt was I'd learned how to kind of, I'd learned how to use it in my job. But then aside from that, I couldn't give you a good explanation about why things work the way that they did in Python, how lists were structured, how functions were structured, dictionaries, that whole kind of journey. And so I know I needed to learn this. So this is when I started to look at, the Python language itself. And I kind of heard this as a familiar story of, when people are doing network kind of engineering, then had done network engineering with Python, they wanted to look into the language itself to see how it was structured and to see how memory was used and to understand a lot more. And this helps you write a lot better code because you understand when and why you should be using, certain attributes, variables, and things within Python itself to make your code, Pythonic. So that's when I started going into this journey, and I started to look around for various, resources and things. And that's actually the point then. All of a sudden, the kind of the light shined, and Devnet came into my life. So, this was kind of my introduction to it, because it's sort of like, oh, wait a second, there's this huge resource over here, and that's when I was sort of like, and I kind of, because I was searching for something, and Devnet came up, and I was sort of like, okay, this is interesting. This is going to solve my use case. So I was kind of, I did a learning lab, and I was like, oh, okay, so now I understand I can take this from this learning lab and I can apply it to my use case. And I kind of did the learning lab in the morning, and then by the afternoon, I'd actually took this use case from Devnet in a learning lab and actually put it into production.
Nice.
I'd actually just put it into production. And I mean, it was simple kind of things to do, but I had done it. So, huge shout out to Hank Preston, who wrote that learning lab.
Yes.
And I was kind of like, okay, who wrote this? Where do I find this? And this is all of a sudden, I kind of just went, straight into the rabbit hole, and that's when I went straight into the rabbit hole of Devnet. And that's kind of like, mine was just like blown wide open. I was like, oh, this is brilliant, So straight into there and stuff. And that it filled in so many more gaps for me. So I guess, sorry, long-winded answer to your question. I think when do you start incorporating Python? Start Python right away, by all means. Start learning Python straight away, but start learning it as learning Python. Start learning Python as the language as well. That's the great bit. Start learning what Python can do.
Yeah. For me, I started with Python. I never really delved into Ansible. I see the use case for it, but from the way I learned how to code, leveraging NetMiko at the time, was I could do everything with that. I didn't really see the need for Ansible at the time. And then Python also allowed me to do way more, how can I say, parsing way more with my application that I wanted to build. Let's say I want to put a front end on the data that I return, or give the users an option to select the ACL that they want implemented or something like that, and then have my script do the rest. So I see that. Now, here's a question. When you talk about the Pythonic way of writing code, the problem that I did face, though, going through tutorials and learning from different people, there's how to get things done, and then there's the Pythonic way, the model-driven way to structure code. At what point should you do that? Should you start focusing on the correct way to write your code, or should you just start learning how to write code?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think every stage, your code, especially if it's in a production environment, is a living ecosystem, and you're always going to change it. You're always going to modify things. You're going to grow, and you're going to experience things. You're going to get more information, absorb more knowledge. Somebody's going to join the team. And you're going to change things around, so you're always going to get that chance to go back and refactor it and just constantly improve it, make it better, make it faster, make it more readable, make it more lean. There's better ways of doing things, which makes it then easier for when you're onboarding new people in the team to read. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, to start with, like you said, is kind of, you might be building something, it might not be the best Pythonic code to do this, but nobody ever learns any language, and this goes from learning Python, Go, Java, whatever, or French or German or Spanish. It's kind of how that evolves over a period of time. Nobody goes to be completely fluent to start with. So get it working, get it going, get it doing what you need it to do. Ship it fast, get it working. There's always that chance to go back over that, I always get that word long. Rev on it, again, get it right, improve on it, grow it, make it bigger, make it do bigger things. I started when I started using, doing some stuff with RESTconf, this script, it just had a couple of functions in it, and it was just like, it was changing an ACL, and it was getting information about the ACLs. Over a period of time, I just kept adding more things to this, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew, and it just became this kind of like, this little, it became like a child. This is how these things start. And this is how, you hear this from, people out there, Will, who invented Rich, and then there's Carl, who owns Scrapply, the folks over at Nornire as well, David Kirk, and all the people that contributed to this as well. It starts off and it grows and it evolves over time. They just start off with this idea, and it just kind of, over a period of time, it just starts going. You just, that's how you do it. It's, like going back to the kind of the analogy of learning another language. If I started learning French, so I wouldn't get the pronunciation right. It would take me a little while. Someone who was French would understand me, but they would kind of tilt their head and they go, well, maybe your pronunciation is a little bit off there. It's like if I showed my code to, someone that is a 20 year veteran of Python, they might look at my code and go, well, I see what you're doing. It's working. I understand it. However, this is where the experience then comes in. Yeah. So it's weighing up those things.
I think one of the things that helped me, especially in my last position, was code reviews or peer reviews of my code.
Yeah.
some people take those personal. I've never been the type to do that, especially since, I didn't go to school for computer science and you did. So if you're reviewing my code and you're telling me a better way to do it, I love that. You know what I mean?
No, I didn't go for school for computer science. No, there's no. I mean, I am sure my age.
No, I was saying the reviewer, they went to
Oh,
school.
the reviewer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, my school. I'm sure my age now. We had one computer. And it used to be on like a trolley, and they used to wheel it in, and there was 30 children in like an hour. You know, you got to go to it and like press one key, and that was computers.
We had typewriters. And you were lucky if you had the correction tape. If you had the correction tape on your typewriter, you were winning.
You were winning, yeah. So yeah, I know what you mean. And there's a whole. For me, feedback is feedback. Whether it's good feedback or bad feedback, feedback is feedback, right? But there is a way of delivering feedback with empathy, and it's something that I've started to do. It came to my attention this year as well, and there was a great piece. It was on Lead Dev, which I follow, and it talked about empathy within code reviews. And it's kind of I've been asked to do reviews on staff's performance and teams and things. And let's say it's the way in the wording that you can do this, and where you can say, instead of saying somebody is bad at something, you would say, this is where we need to improve. These are the gaps that we need to fill in. So instead of putting it into turning into a negative, turn it into a positive of how, you're going to change, you're going to help to change this, to make this better, because anybody can say, well, that's bad. Anybody can say, they don't perform well in presenting, or they don't perform well within, like a Tiger team when there's an outage or something. And you can turn that into, we need to improve, we need to help improve this person, because you can see that they're not comfortable within this scenario. And this is how we improve it. And, doing code reviews, I can't think of a time where I've ever done a code review and I've ever put a negative comment. It's more of a, I would more prefer to put comments down of encouragement and open a discussion around this, because there might be a logical reason why it's like this. So it's really about the discussion of this, and then what you find when you're doing it that way, people are a little bit more open to your suggestions, to help, because I always say, and Anis, who I'm great friends with on Twitter, we always say this, that we're all in this together. So let's work on this together. Let's improve it together. Let's fill those gaps.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to a question in the chat. So Jay Summers has a question, and this question is, what would you say is a good starting point in terms of activities we can mimic on a homelab network that relates to a more professional environment? And here's a good segue for the Devnet sandboxes and developer.cisco. You want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, sure, buddy. Great question. Thanks for asking, Jay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that you do is in, when you're starting out is in lab environments, because, making changes in your production environment as part of a discovery maybe isn't, the best idea. You can do quite a lot of damage with automation very quickly. Yeah. And so, yeah, moving that into the things. The thing to do is, if you're, is to take the things that you see, the pain points within your organization, and you might even want to ask your team lead, you might want to ask your teammates, you want to ask your manager and stuff, and you can ask for, feedback. Where are the pain points? And then, just, make it your kind of homework and just work on those and solve those pain points, in your lab. Find out where they are for the organization, for the company, for the team, and then, turn that into a bit of a story, team into a theme. If you wanted to do kind of like some pair programming with somebody, who you work with, or turn it into a, automate Fridays. We used to have a day on Fridays where we would do work on automation, and we, kind of home projects, but they would be solving the cases, or probably corner cases within our network that we wanted to solve, but we didn't have time to do within the week. And so if you don't have time to do that, within your team, because you're busy and things are all going down, it's building that use case, finding the bits where people say, oh well, this would be so much easier if we automated this, to do this. And it doesn't have to be complex things. I think that's we mentioned about boiling the ocean, but again, you don't have to do that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Think about those things which are troublesome to you, and if they're troublesome to you, they're troublesome for somebody else.
Yep.
People will give you plenty of use cases. Certainly, people like managers and directors will, they'll see where their teams are spending huge amounts of time, huge amounts of cycles. So, try and find ways to automate this, make it into a use case, present that use case, a small group all hands or a team meeting or something. And we have these regularly within Devnet. We have our all hands meetings, and we get to show some of the things that we've been working on, and these are great value, use cases which people can take away.
Yep. Kind of piggybacking off of that, the developer code exchange on developer.cisco, there's a lot of use cases and code samples that are already curated and placed on the Devnet code exchange. So I put a link to the Devnet Start Now. If you have not already signed up for Devnet, click that link, sign up, and then check out the sandboxes, learning labs, code exchange, and anything else, Stuart?
Automation exchange as well.
Automation exchange.
So whereas code exchange is like a highly curated list of GitHub repos which are submitted by community and folks at Cisco as well, automation exchange is more the whole kind of journey, the whole use case. It's kind of gluing everything together, and you'll find a lot of information within there as well. So that it's kind of a little bit bigger scenario-based idea. So taking a problem and then solving it end to end within automation exchange.
Yeah, I think if I was starting my career over now, especially in automation. Well, when I started my career in automation, I was leveraging Devnet, because when you mention about hardware and setting up a home lab, it's kind of hard to set up ACI if you don't have enough RAM or if you don't have a Cisco license. It's kind of hard to set up a Nexus box or an XR router or something to get access to that. With new license updated and actually something that's being ran in production. All of this is available on the sandboxes. Yeah, the sandboxes are a real lifesaver. I mean, back when I was doing a lot of my studying, I bought a load of stuff off eBay, and some of it turned up, it didn't work. Some of it turned on, and it just blew. And then you generally find what the stuff I was buying. I didn't know what I was buying. I really, really didn't know what I was buying when I was starting out. Load of 2500 routers, 2501s, which were great if you were, as backbone kind of routers. But anything further than that, especially when it changed into more like the 1841s, 2811s, the ISR routers and things. Right. They were expensive, and especially the one that always was expensive was the 3560 switches, especially if you were doing CCIE and you needed 4 of these. Yep. In the UK, that was 4 of those in the UK would probably set you back at the time. We're going to set you back well over, £1,000, just over $1,000. And then you need the routers, then you've got the running of it as well. So being able to virtualize everything in the sandbox environment is really, really great. And like you said, is when you start looking at the bigger things like DNA Center, SD-WAN, ACI, NSO, it's all there, and when people find the sandbox, they kind of, you see them in the sandboxes. I think we're up to like 90 different sandboxes now within there. And people say, how much is the sandbox to use? It's like, it's free. And they're like, what? It's just free? And I'm like, yeah, it's free. And they kind of tilt their head, and it's kind of like, everybody knows there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, actually, the sandbox, there's your free lunch. It's totally free. You may have to reserve a lab depending on what you want to do, like SD-WAN or something. You may have to reserve that, but when you reserve it, you're the only one using it. Like the ACI always on, I use that all the time when I was structuring my code I was sending postman calls all the time, and that was a lifesaver because it's always available. Now, if you want to make some real complicated changes and you really want to dive in deep, then you reserve it, and then you're the only one using this sandbox. That's man.
Yeah.
People got to take advantage of that. Got to.
Yeah, it's really great, especially when you're going through the certification as well. There's so many people using the sandboxes to help them with their certification. That's one of the big things that we see as well, is people leveraging that, which is great because it's helping them get certified as well. You know, you're no longer, there was times when I was doing certifications where it's like, oh, well, I can't really do that certification because I don't work with that technology within my, my network. And if I do I really want to be playing around with it? That's okay for doing show commands. That's great. But anything beyond that, do I really want to be doing that? Those features we might not be using, or, I don't want to be impacting customer traffic or, causing some kind of outage by me messing around and logging into that. So yeah, this is where the sandbox really plays, especially for the the certifications as well. It really comes heavily into it. Look at the Devnet certifications, and they're so focused around APIs. Then you've got all the APIs right there for you to use straight away, like you mentioned, DNA Center, SD-WAN, ACI. It's all there to start using and to looking at that information. Especially if you're going by the the OCG, you're able to do that literally when you've got your book right next to you. You've got the book right next to you. You're like, okay, I can just type this in. Oh yeah, I can see exactly this. I can go into Meraki sandbox. I can do this within there. And so it really helps people. I think that's one of the huge benefits to it.
Man, that's awesome. I'm gonna get one more question in the chat. So get the line. It said, are there any groups or ways to get a code review done remotely? For those that may not know someone close to perform a code review on their code. I got an idea, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I do is, if I'm working on something like that, I have it on my public GitHub, and then I just share it with folks that I know. You kind of share it with. It depends. It depends really. It's how far you want to go with this. What kind of person you are. If you might want to share it with your close circle to start with. Share it with a few friends and things. Even if you put it into a private repo and then give them access to it, or you just have it on your public repo and you send someone a link to it and you get them to take a look at it. But then, you might throw it out there and just put it over the socials and ask people to take a look at it, to see what, see how you feel about it, and to see, if it's a project you're working on or you just started working on it. You can think of a number of, Python libraries, which, I remember, seeing in their infancy many years ago, that are now really popular Python libraries. And right from the off, it was the authors just put it out there and just said, and they put it into Slack rooms, they put it into onto Twitter, onto LinkedIn, and said, look, I'm building this. What do you all think about this? Is this going to be a great usage? Is it going to help you? Is it going to save you time? Throw your comments on there, throw your issues, and then before you know it, you've got more than one person kind of collaborating on it with you.
Right.
And you've just developed the next Nornaya or the next ATS, the next Scraply, the next NetPalm, the next Rich. There's just so many, and this is how all of these things started. So yeah, GitHub is the best way to throw it out there. And then depending on how far you want to cast your net, if you want to throw it out there for the whole world to see and ask for reviews, go ahead and do it. It depends, different personalities, different times.
True. Also,
let me know what you're thinking, brother.
Say that again.
Let me know what you're thinking.
I was just saying, contributing to open source projects. So if you, let's say you're using Napalm or you're using Nornir, and you see something that you could add to it, or you see something that you can change in it, make the change and submit a PR. And they'll review it and may even merge it into, main now. They changed the naming, so they may even merge it into the stable main that everybody's using. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of things when they go into production as well. I remember when I was using Napalm and using it with XR. The diffs were coming back kind of funky, not what like you would expect, and so it's really easy just to raise issues against that kind of thing, because you might be the first one to come across it, you might be the second or third, or it might be helping build a use case, but it gives the people who, and even if you don't know how to solve it, raising that issue, you're still helping, you're still communicating into the community by doing that. Because, when something's out in the wild, and people are using it, if you build a product and you own a product, you want to hear people's use cases. They want to hear how people are using it. And this is, one of the reasons I like talking to our customers with Devnet. We want to hear how they're doing automation. What are they doing automation with? How are they consuming APIs? What are they running into any issues with the APIs? It's getting this feedback and working with that to make improvements. So it's the same way with, open source community. Raise an issue, find it, pop it in there. Most of them have got Slack rooms. If they haven't got Slack rooms, or they haven't got a way of feedback, just raise an issue against the GitHub, and away you go.
How do you deal with failure?
Oh, how do I deal with failure? Yeah. I don't take failure well. I don't like losing. I never have liked losing. This goes, right back from the days of doing sports. I did athletics at a county level when I was a lot younger. I did not like coming second. I really, really did not like coming second. But failure became my kind of driver. So I've become more, as I've got older, I've become more wiser, I like to think. And I've learned that, failure is going to happen. That is something that it is going to happen. And it's, often failure, which, leads on to better things. One of my favorite quotes is from, when someone asked Edison about when he, made the light bulb wrong. And I forget the exact quote. And he basically said, I just, found 100 ways it wouldn't work. It's like fail fast, fail quick. If you're going to fail, that's fine. Just keep moving forward. But yeah, the personal, it happens. I work with it. Do I quit? No, I don't. And I never quit. I'm not a quitter. Do I like failing? No. Do I accept failure? Yes. So, you don't have to like losing. You don't have to be okay with it. That's fine. But it's going to happen. So, dust yourself down, move forward, recharge.
I asked that question because you have always had a positive mindset, and you seem to always have something inside you that no matter what you're going through, you can still pick other people up. And I really admire that. And you also have like a work ethic that every day you bring it. Have you always been that way? And if so, what drives you?
Yeah, I have. I believe I've always been that way. I mean, when it was just after my 14th birthday, my father said to me, "Come on, we're going to go to town, going to go to our city." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I hopped in the car with him, and he took me into, like the bus termination, the bus depot kind of thing. And it was early morning, and he said to me, early morning, 9, 10 o'clock kind of time. And he said to me, "I'll pick you up at 12. And I said, "Why, what's happening?" He said to me, "You're going to find yourself a Saturday job." And he just kind of ushered me out the car. And I was sort of like, what? No, I want to go and play with my friends. I want to go out skateboarding, And so, I went into the city, and I found some other kids I went to school with, and I hung out with them. My dad picked me up, and he said to me, "Did you get a job?" I was like, "No." He goes, "Well, where did you go? Which shops did you go into?" And I was like, "Well," he goes to me, "Okay." Next Saturday, he took me into town again. And it got to about this, the third or fourth time I realized he wasn't going to quit, taking me into town. So I kind of really had to, to do something. So I started asking around and things. But my father, my dad had a huge, work ethic. And that's something which, he worked mercilessly hard all of his life. And I think that, that's really where it comes from with me, and he encouraged that in me as well. And so, I kind of started work when I was 14, just on a Saturday, and it was just after school for like 2 hours in a warehouse, moving sacks of sugar around and, dry produce. Yeah, I mean, moving those around. Yeah, I did that for 2 years before I went into, when I left school at 16 to go into full-time work. So, and it's hard, but I think for me, there's something about doing a hard day's work that is rewarding. I get a great deal out of satisfaction out of it, of doing something. And I think that's the best part of it is pride as well. And again, that's something that my dad taught me is just pride.
So, with the way the industry is right now, there's a million different libraries. There's a million different ways to automate. There's a million different technologies that are coming out. You have network security, you have networking, you have network automation, you have the cloud. All of these different variables that are playing a role in people's decision on where to take their career. For a network engineer, how would you recommend they decide which path to take?
For me, it's always come down to passion. Not chasing pound signs, dollar signs. It's always come down to doing something, that I'm interested in doing. I was always an R&S kind of guy. I enjoyed security. I enjoyed a little bit of wireless. But for me, it was really about the R&S, and that's what I really saw. That's what I really got enjoyment out of doing. I was always a huge, big BGP fan. Right from the day. Since I started working with it, I thought this is just the best thing in the world to work with. So yeah, finding something that you're passionate about is the best thing, because if you can get paid to do something you're passionate about, it's kind of like all the cows have just come home. You're on with the winner right there, because you're being paid to do something that you really enjoy, and that's to me that's really important. Enjoying what you're doing. So it's finding something that you find interesting as well. I mean, obviously, when you're looking at it, you can't look at something and think, oh, I find this really interesting. You've got to look at as well where the industry's going. It's not like kind of learning Fortran or something like that. You think, hey, Fortran's great, or Token Ring. Wow, Token Ring's really cool. And you've got to look at the industry as well. Don't learn something that is it doesn't have much career scope to it, to much longevity as well. So there's a couple of things to look into there. Nothing to stop you learning Fortran and Token Ring in your own time. If you're really passionate about it, great, knock yourself out, off you go. Make that your hobby, but find something that's got where the industry's going. And there's, like you mentioned, then there's plenty of things, absolutely plenty of things out there. So you're going to look at these things well up and think, actually, I think I really like the sound of that. Start doing a little bit of investigation. Maybe that isn't for you. Fine, great, change track, go the other way. Absolutely cool. It doesn't always, you don't always find, you might get further in and think, you know what, I'm not enjoying this as much as I thought. I did this when I started to learn jazz on the guitar. I love listening to jazz. Do I like playing jazz and learning jazz on the guitar? Hell no, it's way too hard. I love jazz. I love flamenco. I mean, I really like flamenco. Tried to learn flamenco. I was like, wow, this is really frustrating me. It was, so there's the kind of things that you like listening to, but there's the kind of things that you want to do on a daily basis, something you can really enjoy. So yeah, find the enjoyment, look at where the future is of the industry as well, marry those two things together. It's cookies and ice cream all day.
Speaking of future of the industry, oh grand wizard. The question I have is, the traditional network engineer, is that going away?
No, it's not going away. I'm going to stroke my beard now in a wizard way. No, it's not going away. I just, for me, the network engineer role is just evolving. That's all it's doing. It's just evolving. Routing and switching is always going to be there. Architecture is always going to be there. The design part is always going to be there. It's just, like I said, this is just the next segment. This is just, for me, this is just season 2 of the network engineer. Man, Netflix ought to commission me to make that as a series. Season 2. Yeah, that's just that's the way I see it. I don't think, that the network engineer. It's funny. I read this on Twitter the other day, and someone said, "Oh, someone told me the network engineer is going away." I tend to stay away from those kind of threads, which will spiral into, the back and forth on Twitter. I don't do politics on Twitter.
Right.
Um, I don't get into arguments with people online. I just don't. I just see that as a huge, huge waste of time.
Yeah.
Um, and I saw that, and network engineer going around, and I really, really wanted to weigh in on this one, going, "Well, no, it's just, it's kind of like how, eventually the combustion engine will go away, right? We'll move away from petrol and diesel, and we'll all go onto electric cars. It's just evolution of
Right.
the network engineer skill."
Right. 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 I really want to hear your thoughts, though. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not going to debate with you. But the reason why I ask is I look at traditional telecom. I look at the traditional system administrator. I look at these positions and what kind of has happened to them. Not that the system administrator has gone away, but it's kind of evolved into the cloud and being a cloud
Mhm.
engineer. And so I'm wondering, or a systems engineer, I'm wondering, like with network engineer, what will happen if networks go more to the cloud and um, devices that we typically um, configure become more
Mhm.
controller driven and automatically discovered. You get what I'm saying? When
Mhm.
the traditional tool set for a network engineer isn't needed as much, I would say.
I think it will be needed as much. I mean, I think it's going to be a really, really long time before we get away from, things like line cards and troubleshooting line card issues. Before we go away from that, as much as I've worked with some really great automation engineers and some really, really great automation engineers, I have to say, I've been really privileged. Um, line card issues that you still had to log in. You still had to log into the line card issues to see what was going on, and that was still a network engineer's role. I don't see that being automated anytime. Immediately. If we're going 10 years down the line, it's hard to predict. How we're going. Like you said, with 10 years down the line, I think what might change is the CLI based configuration. I'm wondering how long it's going to be before CLI becomes a feature where, how when you log into an XE device or an Nexus device, you can go into or an XR device, you can go into the Linux shell. And sometimes you have to enable that, or, like a guest shell, when you go into it, you have to enable it. But, with Nexus, you can just jump straight into it. I'm wondering how long before the CLI is a kind of, do you want this feature? And especially if you're going at it from a controller based
Right.
scenario, is, will you ever do that? Will you always then jump through the controller, or will you have to still once in a while have to log into that individual node to do some diagnostic? Now, thinking about my friends back in the SRE world, where um, they were they would still log into Linux boxes to do some diagnostic at stages and things, or within AWS they can just bounce things to another device, or shut something down and bring something up and then do the diagnostic. But there still has to be that kind of logging into something. Still has to be the kind of, again, that deep dive. So even if the configuration is abstracted through controllers, which we see a great deal of now,
Right.
automation is abstracting all of those things. There's still going to be, for me, there's still going to be a logging in of the device, and that's still essentially going to be a network engineer's role.
Yeah. I mean, ACI is a good example of that. Even though you have the Apex, every now and then you need to log into those leads to see why they're not learning routes or they're not learning, devices. And so
Yeah.
that's, I agree, it's pretty much always going to be there. Even if you look at VMware, there's always been like some type of GUI that you always log into. You still have the CLI for VMware that A lot of system administrators that really dive into VMware is still used to this day to do their job more efficiently. So I agree with that. So here's a question. You mentioned Linux. For the network automation and network programmability, which language should you learn? Or not language, which OS operating system? Let's say that. Which operating system should you learn? My bad.
Yeah, no, I said it. It's a great one. Yeah, really, really great one. You are going to find, so many different opinions on this as well, from which distro do people like using. I'm a huge Apple fanboy, I have to say. I just really like the look and the feel as well. But in the back end of that, I'm still using a lot of Linux, stuff within my shell, and most of the time I'm using that in there for things like file management and for GitHub. So the Linux side, really paid dividends. The little bits that I knew, I remember years and years ago, I was on an interview and I was looking to change roles, and I'd learned Linux a little bit by brute force by running in a VM, just within my own environment, and I'd use that. And the only reason I'd spun this up actually was because I'd seen this great thing called NTR, and I was sort of like, wow, NTR is cool. I was working in ISP at the time, and I was watching someone on NTR. I was like, wow, that's really cool. I know traceroute. That's cool. But this NTR looks fantastic. And I was sort of like, so I was like trying to get it to work on Windows. It's sort of like, oh, it doesn't work on Windows. So, so I got a VM and I put it on there, and I was just doing that. And then this is when I started to use a lot of things like NS lookup and bits and pieces, which kind of led into other bits. And then, like I said, NTR. And I went for this interview, and I was talking, and the person, they asked me a whole bunch of RNS questions. And then they said to me, what do you know about Linux? And I was like, well, I don't really know a great deal. And they started asking me some questions, and they got about 3 or 4 questions in, and the gentleman interviewing me said to me, you sure you don't know Linux? Because you seem to be answering all of these questions. I was sort of like, well, it's one of these things that's kind of stored in my brain. But I've always run Mac. If I wasn't running Mac, I would be running Linux at this stage now. It's just something I'm more comfortable running. I spend more time in the shell than I do anything else. So for me, that's just my my drink of choice, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think Windows is doing well by adding the Linux functionality to the OS and catching up with that. But the way the internet and the cloud is, and then automation is driven with containers, I think Linux is a route that will do your career and your skill set justice if you focus on it now rather than later.
Yeah, and as we spoke of before, when you look into the operating system of Cisco devices, all built on Linux. So, then you're able to take those skills, that you have from running it locally to transporting that to running it on the actual devices themselves. And, again, you're off to the races straight away.
Nice. Here's a question. If someone has their CCNP, right? Routing enterprise or routing and switching, should they go for automation or should they go for the CCIE? I get that question a lot, so I figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It really is a good question. And again, it's down to the individual and where they are and where they want to go for their career. So, I mean, if you take someone who is at CCNP and they say, you know what, 3 years time, 4 years time, perhaps 5 years time, I want to be architect. I want to go in that route. I'm going to say CCIE is your best step if you want to go into that architecture side. Cool. If you're, if you're firefighting every day and you're building things every day, and architecture isn't for you, you want to stay, within that remit, of being hands-on, then automation, I'm going to say, is the path to learn, because it's the kind of the must-have skill right now to have along with your, MP. It's gone from being automation has gone from being a desirable to a must-have, in a lot of companies right now. And so much so that even companies are either now saying, they're talking about, calling network engineers NRE, the evolving side of it, that you were speaking about before. And so, yeah, automation is in the right thing. So it depends on your destination. When I'm thinking about what I want to be career-wise, I always think about the steps that I want to take to get to where I want to get to. And that's not to say that if I'm, studying for the CCIE, it doesn't mean I can't learn automation. It doesn't mean I can't learn about APIs, because we know with the way that the CCIE is formatted now, you have to know about APIs. You have to know about model-driven programmability, within that. So it's part of the structure. I think that's the great way that Cisco's now starting to evolve the certification to include, it's always done this anyway. Cisco certifications have always kind of taken a look at what the industry's doing, and then kind of folded that into the certification as well. They removed things which, again, was laughing about tokening, they removed that because people weren't using that in the networks. So what's the point in having it on the certification? Moving forward, the certification is the same thing as, when you're applying for jobs, it's that where you want to go. It's that destination that you want to go into with the certification. So I guess I'm kind of wondering now if that question that you're being asked about the, someone that's at CCNP level, now that the way that the CCIE is now going is because it's now getting into automation and talking about it, and leveraging APIs. I'm wondering if, that kind of decision that people are having to make, they won't feel the need to make that split decision anymore. They can still just channel onto it. They can still just go straight into the CCIE, and they can pick up programmability within that journey. Absolutely, they're not going to be as kind of maybe as heads down as someone who says, I don't need to learn about in depth about MPLS or L2 switching or L3 switching or something like that you would find within the syllabus of the CCIE, because you would focus, you're going to focus in this because obviously the CCIE covers such vast, a range of topics as well. Whereas, if you weren't going for that certification, you'd just be, nose right down into the automation for probably a whole year or something like that to do this. But I think, yeah, that's the standpoint. I think, if you're going down this road, but then just thinking retrospectively about why the certification is going now, because it's taken that into consideration. I think you should be able to go, saying the word both is a bit ambitious, but you would be learning about model-driven programmability when pursuing the CCIE now anyway. So, you'll be picking that up along the way.
I think, and I haven't done this, I need to do this to see how in depth the CCIE goes into automation. I know it delves into the APIs, but how much of, let's say, databases and containers is built into that? Because there's an aspect that you'll learn on the Devnet side that will help you be more efficient and to help you have more of a developer mindset on the Devnet side when it comes to maintainability of your code. You'll get that on the Devnet side. Like, I think a lot of times early in your journey, you'll write a lot of scripts, but now you want to write reusable code and you want to have your code be ran at certain intervals. And I think Devnet will help you get to that point.
Yeah, agree. I knew somebody who was taking their CCIE, I'm going back a number of years now, and they actually were planning, and when they went into the CCIE, when they went to Brussels to take the lab, they were actually planning to do automation off the Windows box in the thing. I was like, wow. That is really ambitious.
Yes.
To go into the CCIE, all of the prep, everything that goes into it, the flight over there, the hotel, the exam fee, the whole 9 yards. go into the exam, sit down, look at some of the challenges, and then bring open the Windows prompt and just start to try to automate some of the challenges which are in there. I just thought, that was just crazy at the time. That was when it was, I think, the CCIE V4 had just come out. And I was like, wow, that's really, really ambitious to solve some of the challenges, because the programmability was nowhere on the roadmap at that stage.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But Tickle's been around for a while.
Yeah.
That's one resource I think a lot of CCIEs version 4 used to use often.
Yeah. This was about, if I remember correctly, because I was on a Windows machine, he sent some things over to me and asked me to run it, and it was about building ERGRP configurations as well. And I was sort of like, wow, because when you're doing the CCIE, there's the kind of thing where you have to know the commands. You got to know them like the back of your hands. You've got to be rattling through them. And a lot of people will say to you, if you have to use the question mark, if you have to query the commands and things, then really you're not in the right place. You're not kind of ready. But yeah, the stuff that he sent me over to do and stuff was sort of like, and I kind of look at it thinking, wow, that's really, doing it this way, not even logging into the devices. You're just going to pull all this information back, and then you're going to do the diff on this, and you're going to run this command in this thing. It's just based on the question, and then do your validation balance. I'm like, wow, that's cool.
That's that 10,000 hours. That 10,000 hours of work, you memorized it.
Yeah. But actually looking at the question and then going, okay, I'm just going to write some code to fix this.
Yeah.
On the spot, and then, everybody knows CCIE that you're on a timer, right? That timer's sticking. So you're not going to log into a device. Up comes a shell prompt, and you're just noodling away at things like,
Man. You mentioned career decisions. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I want to get to some questions in the chat. But you mentioned career decisions. And how do you decide when it's time to make a career move?
Well, first of all, I don't ever believe you should ever leave a job on bad terms. Never burn bridges. I've never, ever burned any bridges of anywhere that I've ever worked. I've always left amicably, got a handshake from everybody and stayed in touch with, folks. But I think they so never leave a job when you're unhappy. So, say you have a bad week and you just think, what, I'm out of here, you leave on the negative. That's not the best way to do, because you're going to have bad weeks. It's like a wave, sometimes you're riding the great wave, and then the other times you're just paddling along. But I think for me is when I wake up in the morning and I don't look forward to going to work, and I don't have that spark, I don't have that fire of, I don't wake up and think, what, I'm just going to go out there today, and there's the things you want to achieve, because I know what I want to do when I wake up in the morning. It's kind of like, okay, I have this, and this to do. I have my challenges, I have my tasks, and then once I've got those out of the way, it's kind of, I start working on my other bits and pieces. So my day's quite, I plan my day out as best I can. But for me, it becomes of a place of just where, if I've left jobs in the past because I haven't felt that I'm learning enough, or that I want to learn more, I want to expand my knowledge, and that particular workplace isn't going to give it to me, and I've spoken with my leads, I've spoken with my managers, I've spoken with owners of the company to say, this is the direction that we're going in, and they say, well, we don't do that here. We don't either use that technology, we don't use that protocol, or, we don't think you're suitable for that kind of level yet, and we don't have the opportunity for you to grow into that thing. We can't support that. So that's when you start getting the things, the kind of some of the alarm bells that it might be time to look for a different opportunity. Most of the time when I've left places, it's because I've wanted to progress my career. That's the main reason for leaving. or the companies have been bought out by other companies. So like two of the companies that I worked for, one of them got bought by a bigger company, and I just kind of knew that down the line there was going to be redundancies made. However, I kind of been studying, at the time I've been working on my CCNP. So, it just came about the right kind of timing happened, and I just started to look around, and then I found something that was local and, suited where I wanted to go. Everything just kind of fitted as well. Making sure things are fit. If you're going to leave a job as well, making sure that things fit, make it work for you, make it the opportunity for you. Don't do it for anybody else, just do it for you. Make it the right opportunity. You're going to get everything out of it. If you're in a really, really good job and you're happy and you're with your team and, every day is really great to work with, and then, you get, an opportunity that comes along, you've got to make sure that it's checking all the boxes. Your con list should be like, I'm leaving friends, I'm leaving a great team behind. The pros list should be huge.
Yeah.
You can't, and that's when you start to look to move forward.
Have you ever made a move for money?
No, never.
Never
Never made a move for move. Never made. Not in IT. I'll give you a great example. Is when I was an apprentice. So as many, and a few others who follow me for a while, IT wasn't my first career. I left school. I took an apprenticeship in hairdressing. And to say that paid really poor is a real understatement, a really understatement. As an apprentice, it's as an apprentice hairdresser, that was washing your boss's car.
Oh, wow.
Washing your boss's car, fetching his dry cleaning, and you're thinking, well, I'm meant to be learning a trade and a skill here, and I'm washing car, making coffee, but it's part of the journey. You just have to stick with it to start with. But I did think the grass was greener at one stage, and I took a job at a factory, and it was at a factory grading carrots. And all these carrots used to come along on a conveyor belt, and it paid probably, let me think, it probably paid 5 times as much as I was being paid to be an apprentice.
Yeah.
And I left that for money. I mean, I did leave that one for money. It wasn't, so there was a time when I did actually do that for money. And I did that for a total of 3 days. 3 days. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And so I went back to my boss, who I was an apprentice, and I said, I made a mistake. And he was sort of like, he just kind of smiled and went, we'll see you Monday.
Man,
You know what I mean? And when I went back, he said to me, why'd you leave? And I just said to him, I can't. I said, I'm just struggling with the money. And he just said to me, well, why don't you say that to me then? Why didn't you say that to me? And at the time, he gave me another £10 a week, which, so £10, I don't know, $13, a week, which to me was huge, which to me was massive. It was huge. It was like a third of my wage. It was like, but to me, that was just massive. And he was sort of like, well, why don't you just come to me? If this was a problem for you, you're struggling, just come to me. And I was sort of like, yeah, I'm sorry. Because, talking about money, it's, a lot of people don't like talking about it. So, but yeah, that was the only ever time I think I left for money. But in this career, since I've been in networking, no, never left for money, never ever.
It sounds like you learned that lesson early, not to make a move for money, because I never hear that it turns out well. It's always one of those situations where you think the grass is greener, and it's never what you expect.
No, it isn't. It really, really isn't. And that's what I thought about, it's the way I thought about the carrot factory. I thought, wow, this is just going to be easy. But standing at a conveyor belt from 6 a.m. till 3 p.m. with a set of ear defenders on, because you're in a factory, you can't really talk to anybody.
Right.
And, all you see is carrots just going by you every day. And for somebody like me, who obviously enjoys talking, and they don't call me the big mouth for nothing, enjoys being around people and all of those, helping people, that wasn't going to fit for me. It really, really wasn't going to fit for me. And so it's kind of, I saw that as like, well, money isn't everything. You know, I'm not happy here. I'm really not happy here. So
Jason has a question, and it's pertaining kind of to his situation about he's finding himself being promised movement, but not getting it, giving it some serious thought about moving for career investment. That's his first point. And then his second point is, it's sad though, because he loves his boss. They're promising security training and networking, but he's stuck on help desk for 2.5 years despite trying to move. So how would you handle a situation like that? Being promised things and it's not happening, and you really like your boss and the way you work, but
yeah, that is a hard one. Thanks for your question, Jason. Going into one-to-ones with your manager, you know, when you're having your reviews, is write down what you're doing, and especially if your employer is saying to you, this is what we want to do to you, you kind of really want to nail them down for dates. You know, even if they say this time next year, you know you're working to something. But don't just, you know, say, someone says to me, so next December you're going to be CTO. And a month's time, I would say, that CTO, are we still on for that? And I would reoccur that, and I'll bring that back, and I'll bring my notes up, because you have to hold people accountable, especially if they're making you promises. Promise is a promise. That needs to be in writing, and that needs to have a date bound to it, and you need to have steps, what you're going to take to do that. And I've been in situations where, you know, I've been promised team lead roles, and then it's come down to the wire where it's like a month out from when the promotion happens. And I've not mentioned anything for the last 6 months or the next year. I have just assumed everything is going well. And I've got into that final interview, and then, you know, we've looked at the paperwork. My manager sat there and he's kind of pursed his lips and then gone, you haven't really done this. And I was like, well, you could have told me that 3 months ago. You know, so you kind of need to address that. If then, say hypothetically, in Jason's case, he sits down with his manager when he goes back in his new year in January, and he says, look, you know, this security thing, this is somewhere I want to go. This is something I want to do. Sit down, we say, okay, we've got a deadline. It's an expectancy. Now, this is a business, this is a company. We can't say, you know, do this and make it happen tomorrow, or I'm going. That's never the best thing to do. Sit down, work on a date. Realistically, boss, when do you think we can make that happen? In my mind, I feel I'm ready for this now, but I know you want me to walk that line in that role before you get me into that position. You want me to show that I can do this. So let me prove to you I can do this. So we're on January now. January, February, March, April, May. Is May a realistic time? Can you move me into that role in May? Can we do this? I want to work on this until May. Work on that checkpoint, work on the items that you need, find what it takes to be that engineer, the engineer that you want to be, find the checklist, the things that you're doing, and do the checks against it and say, I am doing this, I am doing this, I am doing this. If you're not doing something, find those opportunities to do them, and then enlist your boss and say, I need your help. And that's really humbling. And going to somebody to say, I need your help. No one will ever refuse you if you say that. I can assure you that. I need your help. I need to get this. I need to check this off because I'm working to get this thing. If you check all of these boxes off, and if you put that down in front of your boss and you say, okay, we said in January, I checked in with you at the end of January, I checked in with you in February, I checked in with March, April, May. We're now May. Are we there? Are we there? If that promise is then missed, and it happens, you've got to look at that reason for why it's been missed. If it just comes out that there's just a carrot being dangled and you're being breadcrumbed, unfortunately, as close a relationship as what you're with your boss or with your friends, if you're not going to get out of that position, it is time to move on. They'll still be your friends.
Yeah.
You know, but look for that opportunity to move on. You might go back to that company then, because there's been a number of times where you can't grow within that company. And this has happened to me. I don't know if it's happened to you, Joanne. You are in that company, that opportunity isn't there. So you've left the company you've gone outside the company, you've got it elsewhere, and then that company's called you back and said, hey, we need somebody with your skills. So you end up going back again.
Yeah.
That is a kind of a thing that happens. So even if you step away for 6 months to a year, 3 years, this is why people come back. So I say never burn your bridges.
Yeah.
Stay in touch with people, build that network and stuff. But yeah, I know it is difficult, when you feel that promises aren't being kept. But hold people to that ownership, and you say, I've stuck to my side of the bargain. I've stuck to my side of the agreement. This is what we've agreed. It's about commitment and the dates. And if you've got it documented, if you've got it written down, then, people should stick to those dates.
Yeah. Yeah. It's happened to me several times, man. So the one time that it happened, I ended up going back as a contractor for my business. So I really knew the network and they needed some stuff done. And so I had several different ongoing contracts to maintain and install different portions of the network. And that was because of my relationship with them. It's yeah, it's happened, and it never feels good to feel like you're chasing a carrot.
No.
The one thing I do want to mention is that you have to also think about the state of the world that we're in right now. So business in itself for a lot of organizations is not moving as fast as it normally would. They're not having the funding that they normally would. The positions aren't opening up. And it's unfortunate that it may not open up for promotions, but if you leave, they'll hire somebody with the title you may have wanted. That's just the way business kind of operates, and you can't take it personal. You really can't take it personal because your manager is in a manager position. It isn't your manager's company. They don't have the decisions to make a lot of those financial decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean was saying about, you get to, in Jason's case, we say May as our hypothetical date. You get to that. But your boss says, look, we've got a hiring freeze across the company. We've got a no promotion freeze across the company. Your manager's hands are tied behind the back. That's kind of perfectly acceptable. In that situation, you do come down to that decision of, okay, if that's where I am, if that's where the company is, but somebody else is willing to offer that, that's when it does come down to that kind of split of the, again, your company can't deliver that, but another company can. Like I was in a big L2 network, and I want to move into doing routing. There was no way I was going to get to do routing because we didn't do it in that network. If I wanted to do BGP, I would have to leave. I would have to, further on. And that's when I made the decision to leave, because I wanted to follow this, this career path in this. But you're right in that, you have to take into consideration as well, the situation, things that are going on all around you, those kind of things. There is a couple of things just to take. And that's what we're saying about, not just kind of throwing your hands in the air going, you know what, if you're not going to promote me, I'm out of here, kind of, scenario and stuff, because that's never a good thing to do. And it's really not a good thing to do within this, the way that the world is right now.
Yeah, don't make a most emotional decision. Have a plan. Like Stuart said, when you set that date, actively be working on improving your skills on your own. I know your company may not be offering you the training that you want, but there's nothing stopping you from doing it yourself. If you can't afford it, there's free resources out there. Devnet has a ton of free resources. YouTube has a ton of resources. There's resources out there to learn what you want to learn.
Yeah. So when I was doing my CCNP, when I first started networking, I was on a help desk. And I got my CCNA. I went in as CCNA, and I started doing my CCNP. And everyone, a few of the folks were saying, "Why are you doing your CCNP? You don't need this in this job." It's like, well, I'm not planning on being in this job forever. That's why. And I know that my CCNP will show that I can learn more and do more than I'm doing now, which will open that next door for me. So even though I wasn't using a whole lot of that CCNP knowledge within my day job, doing the studying in my own time, and the company I was working for wasn't paying for it. They weren't buying books, they weren't buying videos. I was using PDFs of Cisco, borrowing books off people, buying them off, second-hand books, getting as much information as I could from as many resources as I could to help me scrape through those exams. My company weren't backing me because the company didn't see a need to have a CCNP on a first line help desk. So, doing those things, you're doing this for yourself. And I always thought about it. Someone said something to me a number of years ago, not long after our son was born. They said to me, where do you want to be in 5 years? And they said, no, don't answer that question. And they said to me, where do you want to be? How old's your son? And I said to me, he's 1. They said, where do you want to be when your son is 5? Where do you want to be when your son is 10? Where do you want to be when your son is 16? Think about it that way instead. What kind of person do you want to be at that stage? Where do you see your entire life within that, looking at your life? And that made me really think about, where I wanted to be.
Man, you've accomplished a lot in your career. And
I've been very lucky.
Yeah. How do you determine your goals now? We're going into a new year, so I'm prefacing this question for those that may be trying to figure out how to map out their year. How do you go about that?
So going into this next year, I have the objectives of where I'd like to be, realistically. And again, I'm taking into consideration what's going on around me and how I see our organization evolving, how I see our company evolving as well within, everything that I'm doing and how I fit into that and what I can contribute into that. So I look greatly at now our strategy and where I fit into that strategy, the things that I'm working on and the things that I want to work on as well. So I find out where our overall business strategy is, and I look at my directors, my senior directors, and our SVPs. I look at their top 3, top 5, and then I align all of my goals to those things. And it might not be that I, have the top 3 or everything that my director has. They're 3. So I might take 2 from there. I might take 1 from my senior director, and I might take 1 from my SVP as well. And I take those and I align my goals to be there. And then I speak to these people and my directors, and I speak with the people who are working on these projects, and I say, I would like to be involved in this project. And even if they say no, I will say, okay, I can't actively take part, but can I listen? Can I join the meetings? Can I learn? Can I absorb some of this just to get a feel of how this will go, so that, the next time the opportunity comes along, you will say yes to that. So I look at my objectives kind of that way, to how our business is, how our business is going, and where I want to sit within our organization, where I want to sit next year within our organization, where I want to sit within 3 years within our organization. Where do I want to be, 3 years kind of time and stuff. And it's kind of easy. I look at role models as well. I look for people within our organization for a role model, like, who is doing the job right now that I would like to do, right. And then go over to that person and say to them, hey, can you mentor me? And even if they can't mentor you, can I be on some of the calls with you? Can I be involved in some of the things that you're working on? Find out what they're operating on, how they're thinking, so it's I think someone said to me years ago, I was really into my weight training years ago, and they said to me, if you want to be a 200 pound, 16-inch bench pressing 300 pounds kind of monster, you've got to eat, live, and train like a 300 pound monster. You've got to be eating 8 meals a day. You've got to be going to the gym twice a day. You've got to be doing this. This is how you do it. And unless you do that, you're not going to achieve it. So you've got to start building those habits, start working on the things and building yourself up slowly until you're getting onto that level.
I like that. I interviewed Danny Thompson last night, and he said he was talking about going to meetups, and when he first went to meetups, he felt excluded. And so he made a decision to never be excluded from the conversation again. And it sounds like you have the same mindset. Even though you can't be a part of the projects, you still do your best to insert yourself to at least listen to the conversation. Have you always had that mindset?
Yes, and so again, when I was back when I was an apprentice, apprentice hairdresser, um, the for me the the idea was to be the apprentice of the boss in the company within the salon. Um, and so you to start with, you apprentice for pretty much everybody. You do as you know, you might have 8 or 10 different people working in that, and so you're basically at their beck and call, throughout the working day. But the idea is to work your way up to stand on the kind of the right hand side of the boss, and that takes a certain amount of time. But this is what I learned is that you can learn an awful amount from you learn a lot more from listening than you do speaking. And as an apprentice, I used to stand with that kind of like, stand very with my hands behind my back. And I used to watch what my boss was doing. And there is a huge amount that you can learn just by listening and watching people. Huge, huge, huge amounts you can learn. And that's how I really learn, is just by watching, standing and watching. And then you absorb these things, and then you start to do them yourself. You start to pick up these habits from these more experienced people. It's kind of the circles that you're dealing with and speaking with, and it's okay to ask questions as well. If you can't ask questions in the meetings, like where I am now, I'm on a call and I'm listening, and we've got our SVP on the call, and we've got a number of senior directors and other folks at Cisco. It might not be appropriate for me to ask that question. So then it's speaking with that person afterwards and saying, do you mind if I follow up with you? And do you mind me saying, I was listening to this, I didn't quite understand, or can you give me a little bit more background on what led you to say that? Why did you say what you said here? And you kind of, you can take that conversation off to one side as well. So, you don't have to ask in the meeting, take the conversation off to one side. I mean, you get that kind of, maybe now at Cisco Live and presenting, people will come to me afterwards, after the session, or maybe the next day, and say, hey, I wanted to ask you yesterday, I've had time to think about what you were saying. I'd like to ask this question in this scenario, why? So yeah, if you can't ask it in the meeting, take it to one side, book some time with that person, just speak with them, just say, look, I need 5 minutes of your time, 5 minutes, one question. I promise you one question. But when people come to me and ask me questions now, I mean, I'm really humbled. I'm really, like, this is someone asking me a question. Wow. It's so strange, for people. Why are they asking me? I kind of like look over my shoulder thinking they can't be asking me. Why are they asking me? But it's kind of really humbling. But, when you go to somebody and you ask for their advice, it's an honor for a lot of people to answer your question, because, if you're captivated by what someone's telling you, or what somebody's teaching you, then being able to share that knowledge is such a great thing to happen. And so a lot of the time they'll say, yeah, of course, let me explain to you how this is. Yeah, this is why we're going in this direction, or this is why I said this, because of maybe a previous meeting where we discussed this. So this is, you're getting the backstory.
Man. All right. So I think we touched on a lot of topics on network automation and getting started. And then you shared a lot of information on leveling up your career and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I thank you for coming on, man.
Okay, buddy.
I want to ask, are there any questions in the chat? I want to send a special thanks to our moderators, Gifted Lane, Tiffany L, Taz. I saw Christian came on. Thank you. I see a lot of questions going back and forth in the chat. I thank you all for staying with us today. If you have a couple questions, please drop them in the chat now, and we'll answer those before we're out. Stuart, All of his contact information is in the description of this video. Before we're out of here, is there anything you want to say to the people?
Yeah, I think, the most important thing is don't feel you have to learn everything now. Just master what you need to know now. Remember, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. There is some really, really smart people out there. People who, people like Duane, hugely clever, really smart, just seem to learn things like it's water off a duck's back. And for me, it takes time. Believe me, this where I am now, I sit in a really, 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 really privileged position. It took me a time to get here. At 46, I've had 3 different careers. It's been hard. It doesn't mean to say that you have to go through all of that hard work that I did, the badly paying jobs, the long hours, the kind of 5-hour commutes on those kind of things, having to stand on a train, at nighttime at 9 o'clock at night, getting home and things. You don't have to do that. It's not a rite of passage. You don't have to, take all the bumps and the grinds. Your journey may be different to mine. All of our journeys are different, but do things that you're passionate about, enjoy doing them, and just communicate with people. What I've found in my career is that I haven't got into this great place that I'm in now by being the most technical and the most knowledgeable person in the room. That's not always going to be the case. It's for me now, one of my greatest strengths, and it took me a long time to find this, was people skills and networking and empathy for others. And that has been one of the skills that has got me into the role that I'm in today. So it's not about how much Python you know. It's not about being the smartest person always in the room. There's so much more to it than just being technically knowledgeable.
I do. You open up one more door, and I want to talk about this because this is another characteristic that I admire about you, is how you relate and can communicate with people. How important is relationships in this industry? And, or a better question, how important has relationships been in your career?
It's been really important for me. I can strike a conversation with anybody. I talk to a lot of people. I stand in the queue at the supermarket and just strike up a conversation with somebody, or can strike up a conversation with people. It might just be small talk. But I've always enjoyed talking with people, hearing people's experiences, hearing people's journeys, and also, if you're able to be a part of that as well, is another huge thing. I think that one of the reasons I'm able to be where I am today as well is because I built a really solid network of people, spoke to a lot of people, met a lot of people, shook a lot of people's hands. I don't like arguing with people. I don't get into that with people. If me and that person aren't going to get on, it's kind of, that's cool. If just because we're not friends, it doesn't mean we're enemies. It just doesn't mean that we eat at the same table. I'm not going to starve you. It just means, that you and I have different opinions. I respect your opinion. That's fine. That's cool with me. I like hearing your opinion. I like hearing different people's opinions, but some people you just don't get on with. There's been so many times in my life, and I've just thought, wow, that person really doesn't like me. And someone said, yeah, they really don't like you. And I've said, why? And they go, well, I don't know. They just don't like you. And I've been like, okay, well, what people think about you, you can't change, a lot of the time. So that's cool. But building good relationships with people, speaking with people, I've always tried to remain as humble as I can. And I think sometimes people might think that I've got a huge ego. I think that's a misconception about me as well. People think of it as huge ego, but really that's just me being kind of jokey and silly around certain situations. And I've said, I've been silly when I shouldn't have been silly. I've joked around where I said, been silly, and my kind of my English humor has just not been the right, right place to say things and stuff. So I always just try to keep to be as grounded as possible. And then sometimes I need someone to check me on that. I need someone to say, hey man, just dial that down a little bit. I need just that kind of little nudge, and it's like, okay, yeah, I see where we're going. But yeah, building relationships and networking with people is, for me, this is the best part of this job. It's one of the reasons I love being in Devnet. One of the reasons I love being an advocate is being able to speak with people and being able to help people as well. That's, for me, that's huge. That's huge now.
Some people are intimidated by hard work.
Yeah. It's some people are. I did read that recently as well. I read that in a quote recently, but that's okay. We all have different asks and wants out of life, and I've never been one to let what other people want affect where I want to go and what I want to do. Because if I had a pound, or if I had a dollar for every time somebody said, you won't make it in this industry, or you won't make it in this thing, I'd be pretty rich. I wouldn't be a millionaire, but I'd be doing pretty well, to be able to do that. But it's kind of like, well, okay, that's fine. But I'm on this journey, and I'm going to go, down this journey. I'm doing this for me, and I'm not doing it to prove you wrong. I'm doing it for me. That's why I'm doing this. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my family. That's why I'm pursuing this. So I want to provide my family with the best life, and I want to have the best life.
Yeah. Don't dim your life for anybody.
No.
I appreciate you, Stuart.
Cool. No, you're welcome, man.
Yeah. Hey, you all do me a favor. Like this video, and then after you like this video, go follow Stuart on Twitter at Big Evil Beard. Check him out on LinkedIn, and even send him a message, ask a question, so he can light up. We thank you all for viewing, and we hope you enjoyed this interview. If you are just joining us, please check the replay. I'm sure we answered many of the network automation questions that you may have, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
See you later.